I woke up and I turned on the AM Joy, as I often do, because usually that's where the channel was yesterday. And I find out that Jeffrey Epstein pulled a Washington Madam and did himself in, and allegedly. And look, okay, I love me a conspiracy theory. I'm a big fan. I enjoy conspiracy theories. I think there's oftentimes more to them than we give credit to in some of the basic sense. Like, I don't believe in the overarching giant conspiracies that there's like a one world government that's trying to do everything. But I do think that varying degrees of scumbags get together and try to, get involved in illicit. They do team up scumbaggery. Yeah, precisely. There's so much to it where as this rolled out, I think the running gag was the entire time, this guy's never going to make it to trial. Like, just the volume of human beings that are associated with this man. The two biggest names, obviously, Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Two presidents, one former, one current. And then the old Vince Foster Fantasyland conspiracy theories that the right has about Bill Clinton certainly push him to the front of the line in people's conspiracy. I mean, as soon as it came up, somebody was like, yeah, Clinton out of existence, or add another one to the Clinton body count. All those hashtags start flying again. But let's not forget that in the flight logs just recently that have been updated and released, they included, but were not limited to, the CEO of Bear Stearns, Bill Richardson, former governor of New Mexico, which was an odd one. Yeah, who was talked about as being a running mate for Hillary Clinton, was nixed for some reason. I was one of those people who was very curious as to why he never made it, why he didn't get that he was one of those guys. Like, I had no idea why he wouldn't be one of the first choices as a Hispanic former governor, all those kind of things. He seemed to make sense. I think this may have been something to do with this, perhaps, because he was literally, beyond being on a flight log, he was named by Virginia Giuffre as one of the people she was forced to sleep with by Ghislaine Maxwell, who, by the way, where is she? Where is Ghislaine Maxwell? And is she under wink wink suicide watch? John Glenn, let's see, Catherine Inez Kerr, who's the wife to the brother of the Duke of Roxburgh, which I don't know how to say those words without putting on a British accent. Yeah. Flew with Ghislaine Maxwell. Her brother, Kevin Maxwell. By the way, if you wonder why these people in these situations, besides the fact that people oftentimes are why these people would do themselves in when they're so self-involved, and this is a big if. This also applies to the Washington Madam, because these days it seems to me that almost anyone, especially when it comes to, I think the Washington Madam in a different category certainly than Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein had nothing but dark days ahead of him. Nothing. Like, there is no way out of this for this dude, right? This is the quickest and way out for him. It's not surprising. So the Washington Madam, on the other hand, you're like, she could have written a book and all this, and so the idea that she was done away with makes way more sense in some ways even than he, because in this day and age, even if you do 10 years, you could get out and write a multi-million-dollar book and release it, and how many of us would take a crappy job for 10 years so we could be a millionaire at the end of the decade? You know what I mean? Like, there's a certain point where, someone in her position she was going to Club Fed. She was not going to be going to, she was not going to be in cell block C. And so, obviously, like I said, Clinton, Trump, all this news about Alan Dershowitz and his involvement, which is, there is no way to even touch the angle of Dershowitz's involvement with Epstein without needing a shower afterwards. It is everything. Every time he opens his mouth about this story or anything involved, he comes away looking scummier than he did before, which I think in and of itself, no. And for me, he's actually helped this case along more than almost anyone, simply by not being able to take advice of counsel and shut the heck up, right? Okay, so right. So in Fire and Fury, remember the book that came out that Michael Wolff put out that really drew a lot of attention? He referred to Trump, Epstein, and Tom Barak, the Trump senior advisor, a campaign advisor, quote, he called them a set of nightlife musketeers in the 80s and 90s. Like, all for one and one for all. Like, yeah, these guys were watching each other's backs pretty consistently. And that group in and of itself, with Dershowitz, kind of lurking in the, picking up the scraps. Okay, so and again on this list, Mort Zuckerman, former owner of the New York Daily News and the Atlantic. He invested in the magazine Radar in 2004 with Epstein, and Woody Allen is on the flight logs. Larry Summers, former Harvard president Clinton, and then of course Bill Barr, Attorney General William Barr's father, who gave Epstein his first job that he was not qualified for, around teenagers. And and the weird thing is Epstein died in federal custody. He was at the DOJ. William Barr is literally the person overseeing this. Like, if you wanted to set up a never-ending chain of conspiracy theory, you couldn't do a better job. Like, this is farcical in its absurdity. So Ken Starr, of course, in a fit of incredible irony, the independent counsel who tried President Clinton, he was on Epstein's legal team in 2008 that helped craft the deal that not only protected him, but I think the single most bizarre aspect of this, you want to talk about whether or not he did himself in or somebody helped him along, any of that stuff, any of it, all of that goes out the window when you think these guys were involved in crafting a deal for a billionaire accused of pedophilia, sex trafficking, and sexual abuse. Got him pled down to a minor count where he had a key to the jail, like some old Western, where he could check himself in. And yes, that's right, Andy Griffith. He had an Andy Griffith deal. And he, which would have changed, obviously, if they'd have moved him to federal penitentiary. We got a couple of rules up here on the rock. So it was a squirrel. I can pretty much whip out but again, okay, so it's a solid one. Andy? Anyways, I get lost in my impersonation of him. So all of these things, I think, horrifying essential aspects of the charges, followed immediately by the hideousness of the connections of this man, followed by all the people on his flight logs. All that stuff reeks, all of it. However, the most egregious aspect of it is that deal in 2008. Of all the things, because if the unequal application of the law is the most dangerous thing in an attack on democracy. The idea that there's, yes. Oh, no question that this happens every day. But the idea that this guy is not only going to get a sweetheart break on this deal because he's a billionaire and has all these the mad hookups, but all of the people who conspired with him or were involved or may be found later. I mean, this deal is it's unfathomable. May be found later to be connected to this are granted immunity as well. Are not to be charged. How? Literally, it is. Think of any situation where an egregious crime has occurred, where you're giving immunity not to the co-conspirators who come out and testify against the person or a higher up. Yeah, anybody else who's later found will not be. I can't even register that possibility. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Not only was Ken Starr on Epstein's plane, and not only was Donald Trump considered one of the three musketeers with Epstein in the 80s and 90s. But in here, let's be abundantly clear. Just because somebody shows up on these flight logs, even if it's repeatedly to some degree, because this guy was such a donor and was creating a situation where he had a defense against, being like he basically created a wall of influential people, both who were involved with him and who were not. And there's a huge aspect to this where some people he was obviously farming for influence. He was donating to Harvard. He was donating to science. He was donating to the Democratic Party. And he was using this, and when he started this, obviously this was during his major influence into politics started happening in the 90s. Clinton was president, but he was hanging out with Donald Trump. This was clearly a strategy on this man's behalf. Does that exonerate any of these guys? No. Does it add to the suspicion? Absolutely.
Yep.
So regardless, this is a constant running theme with this guy. So Lawrence Krauss, who's a theoretical physicist, who, by the way, had multiple sexual allegations against him in 2018, and he resigned from Arizona State University. During that time and leading up to it, Epstein was a major donor to ASU, to his program specifically. And they hosted a conference of Nobel laureates in the U.S. Virgin Islands in 2012. So a lot of these folks flew there either on Epstein's plane or were brought there by it. So again, this would be a good example of him using them as a shield. Stephen Hawking was pictured attending was at Great St. James Island.
Really?
Yes, because he was funding all these science advancements, and this was one of his way into this. Look, it is no surprise this guy would fund situations where he could hang around colleges and schools. Like, of course. And so one of those areas, obviously, of all the people, Stephen Hawking is the least suspect in this circumstance due to his physical malady and his circumstance. But again, I think it fits who he's using as a shield. Steven Pinker, AI specialist Roger Schank came out to the island and visited him in jail in 2008. Okay. I get how billionaires have access to people. I get it. especially
It's
because
the
money is so important to political campaigns and to science
I think
research.
it's the money.
You what?
I think it's the money.
You think?
Mm.
It very well could be. I'm starting to.
I'm here to help.
Right. So, in this case, I'm not surprised that some people went up there. Both movie people who also are always looking for funding for films, research companies, and political campaigns. And this guy knew that. And so some of these people he saw as either potential buddies in his endeavors or were active participants in it with him, and they went to business afterwards. There were areas where, it's all mixed up in this, and it has to come out. And my argument would be, and I think this has been the response I've heard the most from my Democratic friends is, if you're involved in what he was doing, you're done. No question. No previous loyalties out the window. Done. And because there can't be any equivocation on this kind of stuff.
No.
That being said, this guy clearly used people as shields, so some of the people mixed in with this won't be guilty of the same thing. I think obviously Stephen Hawking would qualify, if you know what I'm saying. You can't just broom everybody involved. And Charles in our chat room brings up something, and I brought this up weeks ago. You guys will remember on the show when this all started going down. Chris Hayes goes on Twitter and says, "How did Epstein make his money?" Now, he was a billionaire hedge fund manager who was brilliant. And Stephanie Rule keeps bringing up the fact that, if that's true, how come nobody ever heard of this guy? How come nobody went, oh, you got to get Epstein working on your stuff? You got to get, this is the dude. Because he's got an angle, or he's got a special talent for seeing deals or whatever.
You get his fresh thoughts on these things.
Who's fresh? Yes, exactly. He's the guy you go to, right? So, hinky from the very beginning. And, here you have a bunch of people who, need three different industries that need money. Epstein is handing out money to those industries and looking for both a crisscross of cover and collaborators. And there are some people that stick out immediately because of their sexual past or their proclivities, where you're like, that guy's a collaborator. And then other people where you're like, I don't know what the heck this guy's doing hanging around him. Or, maybe he was blind to it. Because, Harvey Weinstein is a good example, because lots of different people were doing business with Harvey Weinstein. And this has always been my bone to pick. Well, we got to take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the Weinstein connection and why that's no surprise.
Time flies when you're rocking with the pedos.
Seriously. Ugh. Gross. We'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPD Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Patreon.com/HalSparks. Please become a supporter of the show. We greatly appreciate it. Show tonight in Santa Barbara with 01, and then show tomorrow night at Flappers in Burbank. I'm doing stand-up. Come see me. We'll be back right after this. So there's a bunch of people on this list that, mix in the area I would think of that qualify as human shields. And then there are other people where you can't know. And all the information should come out. I'm not going, JG in our chat rooms, don't go full Alex Jones here, Hal. Won't happen. It's difficult, though, to kind of parse who is involved in this.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's hard to parse the information. We've got the
That's
files.
right. We don't have the documents. And that's the awkward part. So, also Epstein had this address book and then the flight logs. These are the two big things that got posted, right? And the address book, which was published by Gawker, which interestingly enough got shut down shortly thereafter, became a target by some of the people, by the way, who were in that address book. I'm just saying.
You mean they weren't just big Hulk Hogan fans?
Yeah, no.
Looking for
apparently
justice?
Aren't we all, though, on our own? If only just for his, appearance in Rocky 3.
Thunder Lips.
Yeah, Thunder Lips, absolutely. Baby. So, in that list is Alec Baldwin, Ray Fiennes, Ted Kennedy, David Koch, Courtney Love, who also shows up on the flight logs, which is very curious, and Bill Richardson again, Bruce King, and Katie. He had a dinner party in 2010 for Prince Andrew, who's one of the people who's accused of being involved in the trafficking part of this. Repeatedly, it was a dinner for Prince Andrew that included Katie Couric, George Stephanopoulos, Chelsea Handler, and Woody Allen. Another dinner featured Mort Zuckerman, obviously, who was mentioned before, Google co-founder Sergey Brin, David Blaine, Donald Trump, Les Wexner, and former British cabinet member Peter Mandelson. And another cabinet member, and this is the weirdest part for of a pile of weird. I mean, obviously, like on the flight logs that list Bill Clinton also include Chris Tucker.
Oh boy.
You know what I mean? Like, and Kevin Spacey.
Oh
boy. All right. Yeah. Because and here's the thing. That year, Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, and Chris Tucker allegedly flew to, they definitely flew to Africa on Epstein's plane as part of an effort to raise awareness about HIV, AIDS, and poverty in Africa. So here's Epstein volunteering his plane to fly these guys over there. Again, you could argue that this is him padding the flight logs to water the whole thing down. So Wilbur Ross, apparently after, I guess he was released and given his little, work release program. Wilbur Ross socialized with him in 2011. Like they hung out. Now, many of us, I think, have a horror idea of what it would like to be on the receiving end of a powerful human being sexually assaulting us. Like, if you have a mental picture of that horror, Harvey Weinstein and Wilbur Ross are in many ways like the seat of that nightmare in some ways.
Oh, yeah.
Like that coming towards you. Flight logs of this group, like you're like, this is a pile of human beings I don't want to be anywhere near, kind of in general in some cases. Now, going back to the fact that he's dead. He is now dead. And somebody in the chat room earlier was like, roll his old bones over here. Yeah, pulling a principle from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like, you just produce a corpse. And because I think it is completely normal. I have a joke right now about how, people say you can't joke about certain things. And I think the natural reflex is to joke about certain things. And if you're not joking about it, you concern me. And I use Bill Cosby as an example of someone who doesn't swear but does awful things.
Right.
Because it is, when Prince passed away, he had people farming the internet, making sure that no bootlegs got out on the internet, right? And the minute he died, all of his stuff came out. All of his video, like concerts and if you're a Prince fan, YouTube is your buddy right now. I mean, it has been, right? And so I've had the joy, like a lot of other Prince fans, of watching concerts I didn't even know existed, much less, there was good video of, right? And it occurred to me in watching that and the controversy around Prince and being a huge Richard Pryor fan and the controversy around him, that if you line up Michael Jackson and Bill Cosby against Prince and Richard Pryor, the people who turned out to be the villains are an absolute shock. If you weren't fans. Looking from the outside, if you didn't know these folks and you just knew their life story, Richard Pryor, born and raised in a brothel, didn't know his father. Yeah. And it's a blues song that writes itself.
Totally.
Yeah. And Prince, of course, who did his initial shows literally in tights with no underwear, and the club owner said, you better put some underwear on or I'm not going to let you perform because everybody can see your junk through your tights. So instead of putting tights on with underwear, he just came out in his underwear the next time. And he, from that point on, wear a see-through raincoat and basically panties on stage. That guy never had sex with anyone against their will, and everybody who slept with him was annoying him about it. Like, please, same thing with Richard Pryor. Meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, the other guys I mentioned, not so much. And that's how it often is with people, I think, who, insofar as how you joke, about a certain topic or you talk about a certain topic. The natural response is the joke for a lot of people in an uncomfortable situation. And at TSA, when you're walking through TSA, the natural thing is to go, oh, yeah, I'm the guy with the bomb. That's right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, my shampoo. I'm going to blow up the whole block. I'm taking out a plane with an orange juice. That's a natural response. That's what's going through your head. And so I think the rule should be anybody who doesn't joke about a bomb is clearly the person who needs to be frisked. And it kind of goes to the folks who are acting like this isn't a hinky situation. Dershowitz reeks of this. Dershowitz is one of those guys where, this isn't, the fact that you would even bring this up, that, you know what I'm talking about? Whenever somebody says outrageous, I'm immediately like, oh, yeah, okay, we've caught them. That is outrageous. Usually the denial comes after the outrageous part. Whereas there are also two ways of political denying that you will see. I almost think we have to have it like a lesson for watching the fallout from this story. Like the people named, the people who are going to continue to be named, if they go after Ghislaine Maxwell, now that she's the main defendant in this circumstance, I don't know what I personally think the victims should be able to sue to divide up his entire fortune.
Yeah.
But she's still around, insofar as I know, unless that's the next shoe to drop. In looking at these kind of things, watch for people who have the kind of multi-level denials. There is the absolutely not. The I was ready for this, and it's coming, and I'm going to explain where I was and what I did, and do a full denial, because I know, for the most part, either that I didn't participate in it for real, or there's no evidence.
Right.
Right? These are both people, both innocent and villain, in that circumstance can have exactly the same denial. You see this in politics all the time. You see it in, any time of, there's from police shootings to people who are being sued and their deposition gets aired. that kind of stuff. Though the same people have the same denial. A guilty person and an innocent person, same denial, right? Then there is the person who I think views it with some seriousness and has to undermine the entire question of them being asked from the questioner's point of view. And so this is, I think if you want to see an example of that, go back to Woody Allen's interview about the sexual abuse the very first time, I think it was in 91, when he was first accused of it. And, you know, his denial is fascinating to watch. And I will leave it up to you as to whether you believe him or not. But his denial strategy in that circumstance is not, he didn't invent it. A lot of people do it. It's not Machiavellian. You don't have to plan it. But it is definitely something that comes up with some people, which is, think about the question you're asking me. Somebody asks you, did you do this thing? And they go, think about the question you're asking me. So let me get this straight. You think I intentionally went to this situation when I knew I was under scrutiny. I had 15 minutes to be, you know, in a location, and I used that time to do the crime that you're committing me. And then I did, but I've never done it before and since. Right? That was basically the essence of that denial. And you like I said, you can read into it what you will. And Woody Allen very well may be one of the people who he participated in stuff with Epstein. He very well may be one of the people that Epstein thought would participate because of the rumors around him, right? And went to there.
Yeah.
And again, this is about Epstein's use of people and the availability of these people to be used because of the value that money has in specifically politics, science, and entertainment. The strange bedfellows aspect of this. And again, it is oftentimes the people, it is not the people who are overt sinners. It is, that's the thing that sticks out, I think, to me about all of this. There are no overt sinners in this list of people. There are no people with, you know, there is no...
It's only people who protest too much.
Yeah, there's no Hugh Hefner in this list. You know what I mean?
Right.
The guy who threw sex parties at his house for decades is nowhere near this guy, right? And I think, and I guess Donald Trump would be the one standout. And, you know, as far as overt sinners go.
Yeah.
And that's a curious aspect of the overlay between the two of these guys. Because I think there is one. And it is no surprise that, you know, perhaps in his proclivity, thank you, I guess it should come as no surprise to anybody that Donald Trump may have tried on Epstein's lifestyle as like a hat in the 90s and decided he liked slightly older girls. You know what I mean? In all seriousness.
Yeah.
So we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Housemarks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. So we've got a president in office who has bragged about basically buying the Miss Universe pageants because he owns the place. He could barge into the dressing room anytime he wanted.
Yeah, that was live on the air.
Yeah, he said that on Howard Stern's show. Yeah.
He bought it in 96.
96, right. And was on Epstein's flight logs in 98. in as late as 98. That just came out. By the way, yesterday. Yesterday it comes out that, he never flew on his plane. Oh, actually, there he is on the flight logs. They were just released. And a day later, he's dead.
Time to kill him. Oops.
And here's the thing. I personally, this guy, it's impossible to make a direct line to who might have either done this guy in or threatened this guy into doing himself in, and again, I think it goes to the Hollywood Madam idea, was it Washington Madam, is do yourself in or your family dies, I think is probably the biggest leverage in those situations that the rich and powerful use. Because they can reach your family, they will definitely be able to kill them.
Well, we all know that's a Trump go-to move when he was on Morning Joe going, oh, you stop the terrorists by threatening their families.
Yeah. You kill them and their families too until they get the message, essentially. Yeah.
Right,
so,
because he's never heard of war crimes.
Right. Don't even get me started. Because, I had a whole show planned, and we'll talk about it next hour, because 1 hour of Epstein, considering the dude is dead, is enough. But
unless he comes back to life, which would be amazing. That would be worth another hour.
Yeah. What's that character that Andy Kaufman used to do?
Oh, that's Tony...
Tony Clifton. Yeah.
Yeah.
It turns out Epstein starts showing up in places dressed as Tony Clifton. So Trump owned the Miss Universe pageant, which had scholarship programs with Miss Teen USA. And he bragged about his access to these women in the 90s. He was one of the three musketeers of nightlife, according to Michael Wolff in the 80s and 90s with Epstein. All of these guys, and again, I don't hate on anybody for the outlandishness of their consensual sexual lifestyle. If 9 girls want one guy, or one girl wants 9 guys, or whatever their deal is, as long as it's not based on mental damage, it's a choice of desire and pleasure, that's none of my business. But these guys around Epstein, this is an area of... This is an area which even prisoners find off limits, where even multiple murderers, I shot a whole family, but I'm going to bash your head in because your victims were underage. Like that. That's how extreme this stuff is. And if we find out, because as far as I know, Epstein did not have a cellmate when he died. He was alone. He was on suicide watch, alone in his cell, and now he is dead.
How does suicide watch work? You just
it doesn't,
watch the
apparently,
person
in this
commit
case.
Suicide?
Yeah. So, if you are involved, and I think we can say this unequivocally, I think everybody in the chat room agrees with this. I've seen it several times, because we got good people in there, including my buddy Ryan G, who's in there. I haven't seen him in a little bit, so welcome back, and good morning, Julie, and good morning, Carl. And that if you're involved in this stuff, you're done. That's it. If you are you're found to be part of his crowd, you're done. And I think, considering the allegations against Donald Trump in how he has treated adult women, there is no reason to believe that while he may not have been interested in Epstein's harem when they were underaged, many of those girls were kept on as recruiters when they were of age.
Ugh.
Right. When some of these rich and powerful men and perhaps women participated in sexual acts with them when they were effectively adult sex slaves to this guy. Which, by the way, still you're done. Even if you waited till the day they turned 18, which is apparently an argument that Trump had with Epstein about taking the virginity of one of these girls. I know. Even if you're waiting the day after they turn 18 because legally you're in the clear, you're still dealing with a groomed victim of sexual violence who was arguably trapped in that circumstance. So you're done. And Dershowitz, just in his defense of this scumbag, not to mention his, I got a massage, but I left my underwear on, but it was an old Russian lady, but I didn't really like it because I'm not a massage guy. BS. You're done. And if you have him on your show to verbally defend himself, what is wrong with you? Why does he get a shot other people don't get? What is that about? All right, when we come back, the news of the week that actually has to do with policy and all these other things, because it's a huge deal. Obviously, we had a lot of news that occurred this week with both the shootings and the situation at the border and the ICE raids, that while this monster dies in jail, all this other stuff continues. Yep. Which leads us into the next election. We'll be back. Let's start with a palate cleanser, Johnny. Let's get back to real life.
Yeah, you know, Hal and I have we bonded over being big Steely Dan fans way back in the day in high school.
True, actually. Very surprising.
They're one of those bands that, like, back in the day, every time a sound guy would test a PA system, they put on a Steely Dan record because it was recorded so perfectly.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so aptly by the musicians who were, like, chosen from, the greatest of the great. Exactly. By the weirdest of the weird.
And, man, everybody played with them and on their amazing records. And they are somehow or another still on tour. And they're at Ravinia. Again, Ravinia's back.
Oh, and nice.
They've got hits like Hey 19, Black Cow, which I don't know. Deacon
You know
Blues
Black Cow. You probably don't know it by the name Black Cow.
But one name that everybody knows is Ricky Don't Lose That Number. And so they are coming to Ravinia to, like, recreate that amazing sound. They've got 2 concerts on Sunday, September 1st and Monday, September 2nd at Ravinia. You can get tickets at ravinia.org. And coming soon, don't miss OAR, Morrissey, can you believe that? Lenny Kravitz, really? And more.
Whoa. Ravinia getting all modern after...
Right?
Yeah. After a little bit of, playing music along with movies, all of a sudden...
Yeah, all of a sudden they got some rock bands.
Yeah, how'd that happen? Meanwhile, Ravinia.org is the website, and we are proud supporters of Ravinia here at WCBT Radio.
Heck,
so,
yeah.
Obviously there was a lot of news this week besides the fact that a bunch of rich and powerful scumbags are temporarily breathing a sigh of relief because Jeffrey Epstein is dead and Ghislaine Maxwell has not been charged yet. I don't know how you expect to dodge this. I think the biggest thing they probably feel the best about, quite frankly, is all this evidence is in the hands of William Barr. All this stuff.
Yeah, all of it.
Mm-hmm. So, this follows a week of insanity insofar as we had ICE raids that were meant to hurt. That was the whole goal. That this is a Stephen Miller, Donald Trump production of their wicked hate machine. Let's send a warning to Central American asylum seekers and migrants that if you try to come up here, we're going to hurt you. And if you're an economic migrant, you've been safe heretofore, but you are no longer safe. That this is a direct reaction, I believe, to the 6 years ago when there was a huge push in the news and everything that eventually America is going to be a minority white country.
Oh,
Not that any other race would be a majority over them, but the story was told that the growth of Hispanic citizenry and the fact that we had 11 million people here who were here illegally undocumented or based on asylum from Mexico and South America, that those folks would, because of birth rates and all kinds of stuff, would overtake they wouldn't overtake white people, but they would grow in such an exponential amount that eventually all the minorities in the country, if you lump them all together, would be bigger than the volume of white people in the country. Now, to be abundantly clear, even in this circumstance, there's more white people in the country than any of those other groups. It is only if you mash everyone from Somali refugees to Mexican business people who have migrated here and opened up $1 million businesses in downtown Los Angeles. Those exist, by the way. It might come as a surprise to the Trumps of the world. That entire spectrum, from Chinese, Filipino, Thai, Russian, Canadians overstaying their visa. I guess technically those would be white people. They would listen. Yeah, guarantee. Inuits. Let's say an Inuit Canadian. All those people. If you lump them all together, there's 2 more of them than there are white Anglo-Saxon Protestants in the country. By 2. Again, if you lump them all together. And that number panicked a section of the religious right so much, and panicked the Stephen Millers of the world so much, that they set forth on a strategy to stop that.
Yep.
And that's what we're seeing. You know how you talk about how they'll put up with Donald Trump showing up on Epstein's flight logs and him being a thrice adulterer that makes even Newt Gingrich was going, think. Oh, no, that's Winnie the Pooh. I always get them mixed up voice-wise. The reason they're okay, forgiving all those things is because Donald Trump provides them with judges, both on the SCOTUS and on the Ninth Circuit and on every federal bench. And as long as he plants a long wick conservative time bomb, I guess you don't need a wick for a time bomb. I mixed my metaphors. I apologize. A long wick, like Wile E. Coyote style bomb in the court system, they can get voted out and still protect their interests, both business-wise and in control over women's physical autonomy for the next 3 decades.
Yay.
Which, by the way, folks, is why you never drop your vote for president or not vote and then complain later when this stuff happens. Because while Bill Clinton did show up on the flight logs, along with Chris Tucker and Kevin Spacey going to Africa, you know who isn't on those flight logs?
Me.
Well, yeah, of course. Have you ever been
Hell.
on a billionaire's plane?
I don't think so. No,
Okay.
I would remember that, I think, right?
Yeah, you would. Yeah, you're like, I think that's a really funny thing too. Did I? Right. I've been on so many billionaires' planes. They all blend together after a while. It's one G5 looks like the next, right? At no point in all of this do you see the name or the direct connection to Barack Hussein Obama or his wife, or for that matter, listen to me. For that matter, Hillary Clinton, because she doesn't. While Bill shows up on the flight logs, Hillary doesn't.
We really need somebody to define what the swamp is at this point and what needs draining.
Well, yeah. I mean, because right now, the sales message, is that, Trump is draining the swamp. Is what he sold. It's what he came in, and then he put a military-industrial complex lobbyist in charge of the army. When Edward Snowden, during the 2016 election, Edward Snowden tweeted that the choice in this election is between Donald Trump and Goldman Sachs. And Donald Trump proceeded to put...
Thanks, Snowden.
Yeah. Goldman Sachs people in charge of the economy. Yeah, and EO says, you know who's also not on that flight list? Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, who's been in this industry around Democratic donors for a long time. He's run for president before. Epstein was throwing money at Democrats.
Plagiarism.
Bill Richardson ran for president. Bill Richardson was hanging around Epstein. Joe Biden doesn't show up anywhere. As a matter of fact, none of the people running for president on the Democratic side show up in Epstein's flight logs or his Rolodex.
My voting fingers are feeling pretty loosey-goosey.
They are. They're feeling pretty comfortable with your
loving
choices right now.
Yes.
So we got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to take some callers, and we're going to talk about the ICE raids, which, by the way, are going to increase. Count on it. And Trump's BS about winning the wall case, which he did not. We'll be back. Happy, joy, where art thou? Yeah, seriously, can't stop lying. We need a happy ending for the end of this, clearly.
I've got mine.
You do?
Oh,
nice. Well, then I feel so much better. Yeah, we're gonna end the show with this whole segment on this because it's been ugly enough. We don't even need to start back into this.
Yeah, I know. And when the news comes rolling in, sometimes I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Now I've got to talk about that. I don't even want to read it once.
I have a new favorite science term that I'm going to
What's
talk about. It's not new. It's new.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending. Yay!
Yeah, it certainly is. You know what? Can we play the happy ending theme real quick? Because I think we all need it this week.
I am happy, you are happy,
Nice.
let us be happy together. Whether the weather is cloudy or sunny, I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky, let us get lucky together. Whether the weather is cloudy or breezy, I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo.
Okay, so for the rest of the show today, because we've dealt with such awful, and we will continue, because the fallout from this stuff is going to continue, and we will handle it. And all I'm saying, people, is vote. Blue no matter who. Okay, so Johnny has a happy ending. I have a happy ending, not the least of which is that at this point I'm almost certain that I'm going to fly in to see Steely Dan at Ravinia just because I just realized how, like, loosey-goosey happy that music makes me when I hear it.
Yeah.
Because technically, I would hate it if you use my normal metal standards for
Right.
music. Same with you. Maybe your Queen gives you a little bit more room
Sure.
to appreciate some jazzy stuff, but from a adult contemporary artist kind of way, that's in the world of like 70s groove stuff, tribally I should hate it, but I don't. And so I might have to come in for it. And if I do, you're going with me.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So that being said, we both got happy ending stuff.
My
today.
happy ending is so funny that you keep saying this. I saw Queen and Adam Lambert last night at the United Center in Chicago.
Wow.
And I, because I'm an old man with a paycheck, I have decided to see concerts the way I want to see them, and paid way more than I should have, and got sixth row, which was, I brought my wife, and she had a great time too. But sixth row was ridiculous because that's like the ramp, the ego ramp that comes out where they can walk. We ended up being like as close as any first row seat when they would come walking down the ramp, and the pictures and everything that I've got of Brian May and Roger Taylor and the set list that they played and just celebrating Freddie Mercury with that whole crowd was unreal. It was a really good night.
I'm very happy for you, and I know, and it makes me a little sad, that I've never been in your presence when you've been as happy as you were at that moment. So,
oh yeah, you will be.
And yeah, I'm very excited for you. Okay, so this is there's a couple of things news-wise in the world of science that I am very excited about. As often, you know me in 3D printing. You know me and the removal of lead from our environment. These are my two main scientific, I have a radar for them. But one of the things was that scientists are now able to harness a factor called superlubricity. Superlubricity is when things are more slippery than ice or, oil or banana peels or whatever.
Keep going. Slow down.
Yes, exactly. Just say it slower. So yeah, superlubricity is an absolute factor. So they defy friction. This is a huge step forward in the last 16 months. But they have literally basically they're developing materials that defy friction at an atomic level, which I think the only time we've seen anything even close is the non-industrial food varnish that Clark Griswold is working on in National Lampoon's Vacation, and he sprays their sled with it, their little sled disc, and the kid just rockets. Yeah,
that's the best.
Yeah. So superlubricity is on its way. It's the next best thing to defying gravity, which is also something that I've been paying a lot of attention to lately. Because can I just say, and I'm calling out both Bill Nye and Tyson, dark energy, dark matter.
Yeah.
Moronic. It's a stupid concept. It's invented to fill gaps in bad math. I'm saying it, and I don't care. Come at me, bro. And Elon Musk, it's synthetic intelligence, not artificial intelligence. It's going to exist one day, and you don't want to piss it off. All right. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Johnny Million. Love you so much. We'll see you next guy. Yeah, see you next time. Thanks, Devin. Cheers.
Smile.
Thank you, Chicago.
The history of Air America lives here. This is WCPT 820.
That's a promo.
Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Here you go. Cheers, Devin. See you later, Johnny.
See ya.
What's really sad is there are more Jeffrey Epsteins running around. Oh, there will always be them. And, that's why that kind of behavior takes constant gardening. Wait, what? Fugelsang has mono? That makes so much sense. I'm just saying, having toured with the guy. How many more documents will be released for Epstein next week? Either all of them or none. That's the thing. Knew a few who got mono. Yes, I love the 80s. Right, totally. I have an ex. Believe me, I would have preferred mono. Right? I had mono in my early 20s. It was terrible. Wow. Well, that's James. Totally. This is the thing about people's responses. I am always, because here's the thing. When something touchy comes up, I am fundamentally aware of if it's something that I have participated in the past, and it is, or somebody I knew got in trouble, or I was around them. Like, I'm very aware psychologically of how I answer things when that comes up. And so when I watch other people do it, I can tell, like, that's an innocent response. That's not. Any adult who's done their fair share of, like, wiggling out of situations or dealing with circumstances where they're alleged to be guilty by association, or been accused of stuff that they haven't done, or accused of of something because of guilt by association, what your response is emotionally to it, So, do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like, there's a... Let's talk about lying for a second, shall we? Because in the mechanics of being an adult, everybody lies to some degree. If you want to call them little white lies like Hope Hicks does, or if you just want to deal with the fact that if somebody's asking you how you are and you say fine and you're not fine, but it's none of their business, or you don't have time to explain it, and fine is really a batting away, it's technically a lie, right? That's the thing. And in the case of the adult normalcy of it, and whether or not you're calling it an outright lie or you're just padding the truth so you don't hurt somebody's feelings, which, by the way, I'm one of those people who believes that honesty can be like sunlight. It can work. It can benefit life to have it when it shines, but it can also be blinding if you stare straight into it. And you may not be able to see detail anymore, or shade, or reality, And so the idea of living a hyper-truthful life where everything you say is the absolute truth with total disregard for the feelings of others in any circumstance is just wrong. It's just morally wrong. And so it's an interesting thing. Morally, we believe in truth being moral, but on the other hand, attacking people nonstop because of how you feel, because it's your true feeling. It may not be an abstract truth or a genuine truth, a factual truth, but it's the truth of how you're feeling, so you would spill it, this is how I feel, I'm immediately saying it, that kind of stuff. That unmitigated truth-telling in those moments, because there's not every detail present, because it could impose the truth on someone else so that it makes them look guilty, because your truth may implicate someone else. I mean, you know what I'm talking about? There's a lot to it. So when kids are terrible at lying, like they're terrible at everything. They're terrible at walking. They're terrible at, at first they're terrible at crawling or eating or not putting dirt in their mouth, So over time, kids learn to refine an ability to the functional sense. Babies and toddlers outrun their feet a lot. They think they're better at it than they are, and they fall down and hurt themselves. And the same thing is true with lying or telling the truth, that people overshoot how much truth they can share without making someone uncomfortable, or how much they can lie, right? And this is a mitigation that all children and adults go through. This is a process. And in doing so, there are variant degrees of defensive lying and offensive lying. I would consider defensive lying is people who believe themselves to be innocent but are in a circumstance that makes them look guilty, so therefore they lie about their presence someplace or in some activity. And then there are people who know they are guilty of it and lie to get out of it entirely. Two people were in the same location. One was there cheating on someone, the other was not. But if they lie, the person who was cheating is a lie. The person who was not is a defensive lie, if that makes sense. And I'm just saying this is all part of that, right? I don't know that Trump was upset about Dumbo, because unless he took the part, it's a big D, Democrats, it was for Democrats. It's an elephant, sir. That's the party they do. They're not, all right. We'll talk about hickeys in a second. That used to be, when you're raised in Kentucky, hickeys are a point of pride, man. If you come back from the state fair without at least one, you're like, do you even live? The thing about, learning to lie and functionalize and offensive lies versus defensive lies is that in a circumstance, and maybe it's just because I've been in the public eye long enough now, and I've seen other people defend themselves against allegations that are both true and untrue, that I feel like I have, we'll call it LIDAR, like a radar for lies. I'm sorry, said every child that ever lived. And that's true. I'm sorry is one of the biggest lies a kid tells. So here's the strategy I developed for my son so that when he apologizes, he means it. And this was the strategy. And if you have a kid or you're planning on having a kid, I recommend this, especially when they're very young, as a way to start it. If they do something wrong, and they will, let's take kick grandma on the shin, for instance. I've seen this in many families. Like a little kid does something or physically hits somebody, or takes something that isn't there, especially from an adult. What I had my son do was I chastised him for doing it. I told him it was wrong, and then I said, I want you to go over and I want you to apologize to them, but I want you to say you're sorry, and I want you to tell them why you are sorry. What are you sorry for? Say, I'm sorry and I let him fill in. I'm sorry I kicked you in the shin, or I'm sorry I took that book, or whatever. Then I want you to listen to what they say and come back and tell me what they said. So he goes over and he says, I'm sorry I took the book, or I'm sorry I kicked you, and whoever it happened to was like, thank you, and that really hurt, and please don't do it again. And he comes back over and he tells me, okay, what'd they say? They said, thank you, and not to do it again, and it hurt their feelings, and it hurt their leg, or whatever the thing was. And then I say, I love you, and I give him a hug, and I tell him I'm proud of him for apologizing for real. And now we know not to do that again, because there's a little bit of follow-up. But once I say I love you, it's done. And that thing that attaches why you're sorry to the fact that you're sorry keeps this I'm sorry from becoming a lie. And that has been immeasurable in sort of growing a moral child. And We'll have to wait till he grows up to find out. But in watching, Dershowitz's denials and stuff, I look at those things and I'm like, how would you, how do you not know he's full of shit? How do you not know that that's not, look at what he's saying and how he's saying it? Carl, if only Trump's parents had done that with him, Hillary Clinton would be president today. This is true. I believe that is the case. I think that's true. Or if Donald Trump had become president, he would be a wholly different human being. And I argue he would have been better at business. How that is not how Trump is raising Barron. The line, "You're dead to me now," is involved. Yeah. Well, I don't know that he is raising Barron, and I don't know. I only hope that Melania is, taking Trump's character as a warning and doing most of the raising herself. Hopefully, and that she's better at it. I can't know, but there you go. So, but his parents would never done that. They were just as morally bankrupt as he is. Yeah, again, so Maureen, that brings the question, is Donald Trump a victim of circumstance? I mean, this is where we go. And now I believe once you hit 30, your brain's been your own and it's been solid for 6 years, and you're you. And you have every available human characteristic in your repertoire, especially in a modern society where we have media presented to us. You're not raised in a village where you do not have access to stories outside the mythology of your own group. You know right from wrong. You cannot unknow that. So is anyone, is anyone truly guilty, or is everyone truly innocent? And this is interesting. EO says, what if someone rejected the apology? That doesn't matter, because the apology is about your behavior, not about theirs. And if they rejected the apologies and they said that, he'd come back and tell me, and I would go, well, then obviously they were really hurt by what you did. But I'm proud of you for apologizing and saying what you did was wrong, because now you know, and that's the end of it. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right. Yes, we have a snail mail address. That's right. Can't stop lying. Thanks so much. And September 25th is indeed my birthday. It's coming up. Project 50 is in full swing. I'm going to launch. Project 50 is now turning into what will be my 50th year when I turn 50. A whole strategy for a 1 year of extreme personal growth on multiple levels because of the stuff that I've done. So, grandmas usually accept the apology. They certainly do, but they also will tell you more honestly how they felt about what happened. They'll tell you if what you said or did hurt their feelings. Adults may not. Adults will go, well, yeah, that, don't do that, or whatever. But when it comes to grandmothers, that's true. They will actually tell you why. So, who kicked their grandma? Lots of people kick their grandmas. I'm actually using, that example, by the way, comes from a family that I know that I'm not related to, where I was at their house for a dinner, and they had a 6-year-old who was a rat. This kid was awful. And you could just tell, like, being around him, like, this guy's going to grow up to be a middle manager at an insurance firm, and his entire raison d'etre will be denying people, cancer treatments based on the fact that they had pimples in high school. Like, that dude, that kid is just on a bullet train to awful. And at one point, he kicked his grandmother, who was really old. Might have even technically been I think it was his great-grandmother, because she was ancient. Kicked her in the shin. And they, were you with Epstein too? No, I've never been on his plane. I've never met the guy. I've never met Alan Dershowitz either. Or Trump. Never met Bill Clinton. Never met Woody Allen. Auditioned once for Woody Allen's casting person for a movie, but didn't get it. Trying to think of anybody else. Haven't met Chris Tucker. Met Kevin Spacey once. He came to see my show in Baltimore. I was doing stand-up, and he came and watched my show at Magooby's randomly, sitting in a booth in the back, and wanted to meet me after the show and say hi and whatever. And I got a picture with him. I posted it at the time. And asked me if I think like having dinner afterwards came up, and I was like, it was late. It was like getting near 1, and I was like, eh. I mean, it was kind of amazing because at that point, none of this stuff had come out, and this was all, this might have been even beginning of House of Cards. Like they were filming but hadn't aired yet. And I was like, and I had press the next morning because I think it was I want to say a Friday. I can't remember what day the show was. I think I had radio the next morning, and I was like, no, I can't. And I don't know if he was hitting on me. I'm blind to that stuff. I've had a bunch of situations in the past where people were like, they were totally hitting on you. I was like, pfft. But I wouldn't rule it out because that was right around. That was post Queer as Folk, but not by much. Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah. I looked. It was interesting because when that list came up, I literally went, have I ever met anybody that's on that list? And the answer is no. And it's kind of surprising. No, I've never met Katie Couric or George Stephanopoulos either. Like I've been on the morning shows a couple times, but I've never run into those guys. Like it just seems like I've been able to dodge that. So okay. Let's talk about Hollywood for a second. Because after the Weinstein thing, and I guess to some degree, they were looping in both Cosby and what Louis did and Aziz. Like I said, I think these are totally different categories of behavior. It's a different talk. But whenever those came up, it was like, oh, Hollywood's a particularly, grotesque and pedophile-ridden monstrosity of an industry, and it's everywhere you go, and there's all these codes and people and secret parties and yada yada yada. And I have been, in the industry, a known entity in the industry since '99, right? And I've been scuttling through this industry since 1986. And arguably, if you count when I was doing stand-up, 85. So, in all that time, I have run into let's see. So, is Kevin Spacey actually innocent? Can he come out of the shadows now? We'll talk about that in a second. And I don't know that innocent is so much it, because he's definitely he's very handsy, and that was one of his issues. And that's not right, especially in a work environment, especially when you're the star and people's jobs depend on whether or not, you're happy. If you have the ability to fire somebody, you are in a different category in what behavior is okay from you than other people. It's just true. And Charles, this is true. The fact that I don't do drugs and I don't drink has had a major. I have definitely made that and understood, and that because I don't drink or do drugs, I've never found myself in in some of these situations where I may have, right? Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for my sanity and others. I try. I've been to a few, Hollywood house parties. I went to one that was run by that dude who went to jail who did the Girls Gone Wild thing because, I was literally in a carload of comedians and we ended up there. And I literally had a moment at this house where I was like, this is ugly. And if I had this kind of money, I would spend it differently. I've also been to the Playboy Mansion repeatedly over the years. Time ago. And even going there, everything was so above board there, behavior-wise, and that it was all adults, and that there was kind of an overtness to it, that there was no shame running around. And I was never in any place where people were like, okay, don't tell anybody, we blah, blah, blah. I've never been in a situation. And I think even when it comes to, rock stars and people like that I've been around, I'm usually around them when they decide they want to clean up, right? They don't. I don't get invited to the party where they got into trouble. I get invited to the party oh, he doesn't do anything. Bring him over. He'll come up with something fun to do. He'll be charming without having to do blow or something like that. That's, a huge part of it, right? And here's the interesting thing, Six, is that you don't look like a victim to the bad guys. And you may be right in that I've had a couple of situations in my life where, and I talked about this when the Me Too thing was starting out, where there was a casting guy in Chicago who used to bring in people from Second City in the teen troupe and others to audition for stuff. And it was all young people. And he, literally, we were he's the reason why I have a rule that I don't have representation if their office is in their home. If you're a manager and you don't have an off-site office, if your office is your house or a part of your house, I'm not going there, right? Thank you, Kathy, so much. I appreciate that. I never slut shame as the world has no idea what behind the scenes is. And that's true. You don't judge people based on your own sexual mores as long as it's consensual, like I said. So, Hal Sparks with a deck of Uno cards at Playboy Mansion. No, clearly not. But this guy, during an audition, I was at the teen troupe at Second City. I'm an alumni of Second City, and when I was 16, I would audition everybody. Everybody knows the story that I've told, which is true. Is my dad grounded me to keep me from doing stand up, so he would only give me the lunch at New Trier cost $10, and he would give me $5 because he knew I couldn't. I'd barely get to that, and I'd have to come home and eat after school, so I wouldn't go anywhere. And I would take that, and it was $1.25 down to Chicago on the L, and $1.25 back, so that's $2.50. And then the other $2.50 I would use for a bottle of water and a snack of some sort. I wouldn't eat lunch at school, and I would wait till eat dinner later at home. And so that $5 got me to all my auditions, and I would have to walk to them because I couldn't afford to take the train to each place. So I would run into kids from New Trier whose parents drove them to all their auditions. They were all going to the same ones I was because the calls went out to the same kind of talented kids in Chicago for certain roles. And so I'd always see the same kind of kids in the same age range. And all these rich kids would have their parents literally driving them in their air-conditioned SUVs back and forth to all these auditions, and I would be sweaty as hell because I had walked, right? Or freezing, because it was cold. And but I did it, and I loved it, and I never griped, and I knew I was paying my dues, and I knew it would work, and all this kind of stuff. And the only weird audition I ever had, we got called to this audition for a movie and everybody was excited to be auditioning for a movie. And this guy cast a lot of shit, and I didn't get. I went. This is my first audition at this. I was very early on in my career. I'd just gotten an agent, and I go to this guy's his office was in his apartment, and already I was side-eyeing this, because I saw Fame. I mocked Coco in Fame. I used to have a joke in my stand-up act about, because I was like, just leave. Just leave. You don't need work that bad. That's not what they ask you to do. And if they cast and couch you, there's another outlet. Beat it. And tell somebody. I don't care. Nobody's going to, you'll never work in this town again, kid, is horse crap. Like, nobody. Anyway, so, okay. Here's the thing. I go into this guy's place. Two of the other kids I knew from one kid from my school and one kid from Second City were there waiting in this guy's foyer, which he had chairs set up like a lobby. And he said, hang out right here. And he had his office was just over in the corner. You could see it or whatever. And during the audition process, when everybody was there, he just said, it's really hot in here. Excuse me a second. And he left the room, took off his pants, and came back in. Still had his shirt on and underwear and like socks, and that was it. And I was like, bye. I was 16, and I was like, no. I didn't even want to go into this, like, that. The apartment thing was a huge red flag. I'm like, if he'd done that in a regular office, I'd have left. But it was also his apartment. I was like, see ya. And I never got another film audition in Chicago after that. He died maybe 4 years later or something like that. Heart attack. Maybe. But, so, that I would say that's the, and literally, I was like, I forgot about Fame, man. That was everywhere for a minute. Yes, it was. And I bet you gave this guy a poor Yelp review. They didn't have Yelp, Carl. West Valley. No. West Valley's a totally different thing. So at that one time, after that, I've been to, when I was in my 20s and before I was known, I had a couple of credits and that kind of thing. And largely, again, I got long hair, all this kind of stuff. I'm just in a different patch of being. But I was in, it was an after-school special with Scott Grimes and all that kind of stuff. So I knew some what would be child stars during their down periods and stuff, and got invited to parties and those kind of things. But I ultimately never, and again, this is sort of an epiphany for me, you guys, because I think I think it's true that largely because I don't drink or do drugs, I dodged a lot of this stuff. That being said, I was never offered, even people who didn't know I didn't drink or do drugs. I saw it being done a couple of times, but I saw it being done a couple of times in high school, too, at parties. So it wasn't like in L.A. when I came out there, I was like, oh, damn, right? It's everywhere. Although the first time I saw cocaine was at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles when I was 17. But I thought it was that it was a joke because there was so much of it. That being said, I think of the few, like, before I was known, when I was young and more of like a target, pre-Queer as Folk, Talk Soup, where I definitely, like I said, I had enough cue to be on the radar. Yeah. None of those times, I can say unequivocally, none of those times did I ever feel like this is some sort of, certainly not some sort of Illuminati indoctrination, and definitely I'm not being led into a fold of people who misbehave. And again, maybe it's because I'm a loudmouth and nobody, maybe actors are easier targets or musicians because they internalize stuff and they don't sell it, and comics aren't, unless they're open and active participants, you don't involve them at all. The other thing too is comics don't have to worry about a bad reputation, largely. I mean, up until now, and even Louis C.K. will make a comeback. Aziz just had another special. My agents wish I had some sort of scandal so I could have something to talk about in another special that would get extra press. So maybe, like I said, maybe I'm sequestered out because I'm a comedian. Maybe I'm sequestered out because I'm a loudmouth. Maybe I'm sequestered out, quite frankly, because I'm not needy at all. Like I only like attention for it representing that I'm doing a good job, right? That to me, like that, I've never been a comic where I'm like, love me, please like what I'm doing. Like that idea has always boggled my mind when you hear that about comics supposedly needing the attention, and that's why we do it, and Dance Monkey Dance, and it's just that idea. I hear it even from comics, and that I don't believe actually feel that way, much less the ones who supposedly do. I just don't buy it. I mean, the attention is reflective of success, not because it fills a void, but because, a bunch of people like what I'm doing. Obviously, what I'm doing resonates. That's, I don't know. For me, and again, maybe that's why. Maybe that's why I've never been around that stuff. Hal Sparks scandal. He uses USB microphone, not XLR. That it's kind of true. I mean, here's the thing. Like, I even say in my stand-up act, and this has, the thing with stand-ups, is that stand-ups can get away with stuff most of the time that actors and musicians cannot, because we're on a different moral category, partly because we're so honest, and partly because we live more realistic lives. The minute you become a celebrity comedian like Louis or Seinfeld, people start thinking that your relationship is their business and blah, blah, blah. And I've certainly lived through little segments where people, were interested. And will again, clearly. I mean, like the next dramatic series I get, believe me, people will forget I'm a stand-up and start wondering who I'm dating and why. But, comedians can get away with so much more because of the absurdity of what they're doing. And the joke I had in my act for a long time is that, an actor, if an actor looks at somebody while they're dating somebody else, it's page 6 material. But if a comic walked out of if I walked out of a brothel with it on fire, dragging a donkey in S&M wear and, holding hands with a midget prostitute and a little person prostitute, excuse me, and because this is such an old joke, and, and the world's tallest hooker, all arm in arm, walking out of there, people would just go, "He's so crazy," because that's the world of a comic. That's the world. You know what I mean? I'm sorry if you're getting spinning wheels. I don't know why that is, because insofar as feed on my way out of here, as far as the output, it seems to be working fine. So, yeah. You are comedy first with me, and as a comic, we can get anything. I do a whole rape set, and I never get said anything to but my male friends. Yikes. See, I cover that topic as well pretty directly, and I've never had a problem. And the reason is I think it's how you do it. Again, this becomes a talk about jokes. Okay. Not to give away any of my set that I've been working on, and it's always hard to talk around or about these kind of things, and Kathy in our chat room will probably know more about this, whatever. But you can joke about anything. Your jokes just have to be structurally strong enough to withstand the weight of the topic. If it's a light topic, if it's a featherweight topic, you can hold it up with nothing. You can say, what is the deal with McDonald's, and start off on something like that. I don't think it's hooker. That's true. I only say hooker because I think it's funny. Hooker is a funnier word, and it relates to a Civil War era commander who had prostitutes, and it was called Hooker's Corps, but that's another thing. Anyways, that if the heavier the topic, the more the structure of the joke, how funny it is, and how philosophically and intellectually sound it is necessary to hold it up, right? You can't hold up a boulder with toothpicks. And I think a lot of people try to do that, and they go, people are so touchy. It's like, no, your jokes just aren't funny enough for that topic. That topic is too big for your little support structure of jokes. That's all. That really is it. If you're running into a situation where you address a topic and people are getting upset at your addressing the topic, it just means you don't have enough jokes, or your jokes aren't strong enough, or occasionally is the issue, but very rarely, and this does happen, your jokes are philosophically invalid. They are either another act of violence themselves. They are re-victimizing people, so they are unfunny for that very purpose. They are dismissive of victims, for example, because most rape jokes are rapist jokes. They are jokes about the people who commit the act and why they think it's okay and how dare you have those thoughts and those kind of things. So as long as your jokes aren't re-victimizing someone, and you can go a lot of different places. But you also have to be really funny on top of it. It's not enough to just do one of the two things. There's so much, you can balance a feather on the head of a pin, and it's, or in a matchstick, and it's not a problem. It's not going to fall over. You can literally do it and walk away. But if you've got this giant thing, it needs several points of structure. It has to be philosophically sound. It can't re-victimize people, and it has to be so goddamn funny, it's inarguable. And that's the where most people go wrong, quite frankly, because the jokes just aren't funny. They're like, people, right? It's dumb. And that's about all topics. And anybody who has seen my whole set lately knows that I reach a point in my set where I go, we have literally joked about everything you're not supposed to joke about, and we're all still here and we're fine. And I usually get a large round of applause at that point, because there's so much tension after you've done these kind of jokes, and but what's he going to go to next? That I break and do that, and it's kind of a punchline in and of itself. Yeah, and Brad, here's the thing. Or the person who is saying you're not funny does not have a sense of humor. That's a good point, but here's the thing. They may not think you're funny, but if your jokes are quality enough, they will not be able to argue with the volume of others who are. That it isn't just one single group. That you're not making the white supremacist incels in the crowd laugh and everybody else is frightened, and they're going, you're not funny, you're just placating these awful people because you're awful. If you're funny, it's inarguable even if the individual doesn't find you funny. Because we all know comedy is subjective, but you can't argue with that subjectivity if there's a huge amount of of people involved in it. So, Maureen, this is true, but women also commit rape. My good friend Terry Jones, who's a comedian, addressed that this week on Twitter, and he got a lot of backlash because he's black, and he was talking about what goes on in the black community with underage black men and women, and it's a huge issue there, and he was trying to address it. He wasn't even making jokes about it. He posted something and was addressing the real concern. He wasn't even trying to do comedy about it. He was just saying this is something, and he got jumped on. That humanity has all these issues, and comedy is one of the ways where we walk out, that we differentiate the monsters from the rest of the crowd. And if we don't, we leave a chunk of the crowd in the monster category that don't belong there, and the monsters therefore think they outnumber the good people. That happens. So, Carl, I'm so sorry. Stretch, breathe, relax. Maureen, it is not entirely a power move. Physical violence of any sort is a power move as well. It has a sexual component that you cannot remove. And these people would not commit these same acts if they didn't get sexual gratification from it. I understand that that sexual assault is a power move, but it's not just a power move. But that's another conversation for another time. Here's the thing. And that's, not obviously, the only topic that is difficult to talk about in stand-up. It just isn't. There are lots of them. But again, if you're going to address any of them, the quality of what you're doing has to be next level. Either the writing has to be so tight and so absurd that it is, if you appear to be joking for, killing an innocent or whatever, all those kind of things. It has to, it has to be so off the charts that people don't really believe it's true, so that they can laugh at the absurdity and the pain and release it in a cathartic manner. Or it has to cover all the philosophical bases and be clear in your presentation of it so that the joke has a good birthing point. So if you are sarcastically, like I had to change, this is a good example, I had to change how I worded a joke because I thought, coming from where I am, that it was obvious how I was being positive. I was trying to be supportive of a circumstance, and I was mocking someone's misunderstanding to where that misunderstanding, it looked like it was actually coming from me. And there's a difference between me mocking someone with a misunderstanding and or the pretend misunderstanding when they're really using that to hide their own bigotry, and me actually having it myself, right? And because I'm so earnest in my stand-up that if I slip into sarcasm or irony without some marker, it's easy to believe the thought is genuine. So from my point of view as a comedian, it's very easy to fall into that as an audience member if you know my act or if you don't know my act. So I have to be very distinct in those. And one of the areas where I talk about a woman in a burqa and how nervous people get and how that's, how fearful they get of a woman in a burqa, and I see it. It came from being in the Mall of America and seeing a woman in a full burqa and hijab and everything, and seeing just the response from people, bless their heart, trying to hold it together. Okay, let's be honest. These people are not used to seeing this. This is something new to them. This is something that's out of the ordinary for them. They may have heard a lot of fear-mongering and stuff, but they're not being overtly hostile. They're just put off by it, right? And that's a real thing. And if you don't believe me, take a black friend of yours to China and walk around. And you'll see how people who aren't used to something react to something they're not used to being around. Okay? So I don't fault these people directly, right away. And in the case of, those folks, I have a joke about it. It might be a deeply devout woman, or it might be a ninja who's let himself go. And, because they're, in my mind, I had those of you who don't know, I studied ninjutsu when I was in high school, and I had a full ninja outfit that I had purchased, like a lot of 80s martial arts kids. And there are leg ties that go around it. It's like a regular black gi that you would wear in a karate class, but you also have ties around the wrists and the arms and the legs so that it doesn't snag on things, is the idea. If you watch any 80s ninja movie, that was the outfit, right? And so the idea in my mind was let himself go meant he's not doing his ties anymore. It's just a drape, just a black drape with this, right? And that was that's my mental image, right? And so having that mental image, that's an automatic mental image for me. It's not an automatic mental image for anybody who didn't have a full ninja uniform when they were 17 years and 15, I think was when I got my first one, 15. It's not an automatic mental image. And so you got to be aware of that in front of your audience. So I have to pad that reference. And so instead of saying, I understand why people could be nervous, the original one was like, I understand why you'd be nervous. because it could be a devout religious woman, or it could be a fat ninja who's let himself go, and you won't know until it's too late. And it sounded like that was my concern. So I started just adding sir to that and going, I can understand your concern, sir. I can see how that makes, because you might be right. It might be a devout woman, but I can understand why you're afraid, sir, because it could be a fat ninja who's let himself go. And that sir added one of the extra pillars of support philosophically that let the audience off the hook that they weren't sharing in a bigoted belief, because they're not. And that's necessary. Well, I addressed that as well in the bit, and that's exactly right. I mean, if it's the same reason the yarmulke exists, because Jews start to bald right here, and sun exposure can give you skin cancer, and they start getting little brown spots, and suddenly God hates the top of your head. It's so obvious. Well, all right. Can't Stop Lying and I are going to do a Chuck's display at some point then. Me too, and I'm excited. We'll trade techniques. I'm for it. I'm dead serious. I'm mad skilled with them as well. I never learned to do two because it was all just for show. If you do two pairs, there's no purposeful use. It was a good display of dexterity, but it ceased to become a weapon in those regards. So. So we need a comedy forum after the show. Wish I was in Burbank this week. That would rock. Yeah, exactly. I mean, because and Kathy can probably speak to this a little bit. But I don't personally believe there's an edge anymore in stand-up for real. You could lose your career, but you won't go to jail. The edge died when Lenny Bruce did, and we all learned the lesson that you don't jail someone for free speech. And so, in the United States, anyways, in England and to some degree Canada, it's alive and well. It's still a fine, though. You can be fined, but you're not going to be locked up, even for repeated violations. And so it's almost like a tax that you pay as a performer. Yeah, do Chuck's while impersonating Mr. Furley. Jack? Yeah. So anyway, so that's the end of our little comedy, class on that. So any comedians who see this, and I'm going to cut out a little clip of this and air it later, I think, on its own, because I think this has to be addressed. But any comedians who see this and they're like, audiences are too edgy, or you can't say anything anymore, or any of that crap, let me just say unequivocally, your joke isn't funny enough. That's the problem. You're not good enough for the topic you are taking on. You are not of quality yet. You might be one day, and your material might have a great point to it, but you need to revamp it and work on it. Because if it's a funny notion and a genuinely original funny thought, and the audience is receiving it in a hostile manner, it's because you aren't there yet. Either you haven't written it well enough, you are making assumptions about the perspective, or flatly you suck at stage work. You're not a comic yet. You're not there. And you've got work to do before you do it. And I saw open micers, this LA especially, but this country's full of open micers who think they're Lenny Bruce from day one. And you're not. And it takes some skill. And if you don't work on it, if you don't take that seriously, and if you don't actually recognize that that's a quality you have to work on, then you're going to end up like Michael Richards. Because that was Michael Richards' problem. Michael Richards' issue was not that he said the N-word on stage. Because there's a bunch of white comics who've said it, and there's tons of black ones that do, and there's some Asian ones that do as well. It's why you say it and how you say it and what context and the strength of which you say it. And the value of saying it, whether it was worth saying or not in that moment. But Michael Richards' mistake was thinking that he could go from 0 to Lenny Bruce in 60 seconds, and you don't. You earn that. You earn that with the audience. You earn that with the quality of the material that you have superseding even the delivery, and you earn that with time on stage and your ability to bring across material that has to get past the subconscious censor people have about certain ideas. Michelle, thank you, Masked Man, and I put this out a little while ago. Is one of the quintessential comedy bits of my life. It's right up there with Black Ben the Blacksmith, and in many ways, I wish someone would do that for Black Ben the Blacksmith, because that changed my opinion about what I was allowed to do in comedy. Well, that is a pretty bizarre show, man. That's right, because it was the use of the word "charter." So, Hal, when can we see your newest set in the Chicagoland area? Relatively soon. I'm booking for the fall now. There was big news on the China show front, and so I may be going back there to shoot some more stuff to add to the stuff that we already shot and to finish the show as it is. I will also be directing that show from now on. That's more stuff. Yeah, but there you go. Yeah, Joan Rivers. You have to hump the stool for a while before you get good. This is true. See, and Ellie, open mics may be cringy, but there's no way to practice stand-up at home. There's certain bits that require linguistic work, and if you've got lips like mine, some stuff just requires practice. Otherwise, you will not be able to say it in a row. I had this baseball bit about baseball announcers seeming to know every detail about every player on every team at any point during the game, and I had to run it like a monologue in my head because it was so absurd, and it required Tompkins steps up to the plate, and I think at one point was like pop fly to center field, Balzetti settles under that. I see it's been so long. This is why you'd have to practice at home. Well, it settles into that one. The gay son of Italian immigrants settles into that pitch as Tompkins rounds second, carrying the guilt of his father's murder, like that. So, but it was a series of things that I would prattle on. That required, practice. But it was 2 minutes long when I wrote it. It ended up being 1:10 by the time I did it on stage after a while, because there's no substitute for being on stage. Stand-up, you must do on stage. You can practice singing in a room by yourself with a voice coach until they go, you're in pitch and you sound good, and then you go do American Idol, right? You can do that with acting. You can be in acting classes. You can watch movies until you get to the point where you're doing an acting class. Stand-up is the only job where you only get the job by doing the job. It's just that. It's just the truth. You can't. There's no point where you can practice stand-up that way. Could Carlin get away with saying it? He said it. Yeah, Harry Carey. That's right. I was basically doing, because that's my Chicago upbringing, right? Sadly, Americans are accustomed to the taste of rancid olive. Oh, we're talking about olive oil in the side chat. That's good. And we're in context of it would use for shock makes you a turd. Agreed. And see, I don't say it, and I comedically avoid even using the phrase N-word in my act when I'm talking about it. And there are times when in joke concept form, it might be appropriate. I just choose not to. And I've always had this theory that there are 10,000 jokes for every one you're making. Whatever one I'm sitting here writing and I think is the last joke about this idea, there's 10,000 other ones in my brain somewhere. Find it. And I should be able to find one that cleans up the need for that for me. So I don't, right? Oh, I've seen Hank Azaria and Brockmire. I have not, but Tyrell it was on there, and I keep wanting to. So, I disagree with that, Ellie. Hold on. So this comes up a bunch too. The idea that if you say N-word, you're de facto saying that word. The idea is that I think Louis C.K. at one point said this. You made me think that word. Yes, because you know that word. The whole point of using that, at least in concept, like some things, is like spelling around children. So you're not saying the word on the news and normalizing it, but you're also not saying it to any new person receiving that word into their head as okay. So you don't normalize the normal use of it. So yes, adults think it when it's said. Yes, you're avoiding saying it, but you're referencing it in a way that if an 8-year-old is watching the news, they don't think that word is okay. And it's bad enough with the news these days, as bad as, just tap dancing around this stuff. And we've run into this with shithole country when the president said that and those kind of things where everybody's like, he said it, so that you should be able to say it. I'm like, no. You can isolate swear words when they're used in and out of context, and you don't have to repeat it. And that, by the way, that reference that EO made earlier to, and I don't know if this gets me into YouTube trouble or whatever, but the sea sucker word, how about that? We'll just call it that. Lenny Bruce has a whole bit about how he got arrested for saying a word, and then the cop said it in court. He said it in a nightclub where people had paid to see it, and then the cop and the judge kept saying it back and forth to each other. Like, he said blah, blah, blah. He said, what? He said blah, blah, blah. Yeah, he said blah, blah, blah in front of a bunch of people. Blah, blah, blah. He said it twice. He said it here. He said blah, blah, blah this. And he said he called this person a blah, blah, blah. And then he goes, he realized after a while, wow, they're really getting off on the idea of saying blah, blah, blah. And that's true. You can isolate those things. Just ID the word because it was said, and then don't say it. And you can, if it needs to be referenced, reference it that way because you don't introduce that to a new generation of kids, black or white, that word is normalized in regular behavior. And largely because you don't want little white kids growing up thinking that that's a word that's used regularly. And it's, by the way, it's worked. That it used to be way more normal. But when it started being addressed as N-word, even the kids that knew it in my middle school in Kentucky, in the 80s, they started saying that. Once they started doing that, it kind of was also a reference to that word's not okay to say out loud. It's not okay to use in company. And where it might not have stopped them from being racist and it might not have stopped them from using it in their own homes because that's how they're being raised, it kept them from using it flagrantly in front of other kids who don't live like that, like myself, quite frankly. Because there were kids in my middle school and my high school in Kentucky that used the word who were white, and there were kids who absolutely would not. And so it was a good distinction to make. And that misnomer, that idea that, well, it's just making you hear it, because I think that's one of Louis C.K.'s bits, and I've written a couple of bits in my life. Some of you may know them, like the smoker bit, like, non-smokers, for example. That bit was written in response to a bit that both Louis C.K. and Doug Stanhope, who, at the time especially, I had comedic respect for, but philosophically I disagreed with their premise. I disagreed with the idea that non-smokers exist. And I was like, stop calling me something that references your behavior. That was my problem with it, because I don't smoke, and I'm not going to be referenced as if that I live my life minus smoking. That's not how life works. And that was my issue with Rogan about pot, and we've talked about that before. So the same thing applied to his bit about children. My F old people bit, which many of you saw, was in reference to the fact that Louis C.K. kept crapping on his children as if they were adults, expecting adult behavior from children, which I think is the flaw, is the moral, ethical, and philosophical flaw. And so I thought that was worth doing, right? This WWS, I've seen this a bunch of times, and I've heard it mentioning, and I don't doubt it exists, because as someone who's been mic'd a lot in my life, and who've heard the conversations from sound people over the course of the tapes that float around of a bunch of people saying stuff. And by the way, not all of it, racial or racially or sexist charged. Sometimes it's just private behavior. If they're having sex in their trailer and they forget to take their mic off, in a consensual circumstance with another adult whom they are dating or whom they have just met 2 minutes ago, who cares? That's their business. And the idea that somebody taped that and kept it is very concerning. Meanwhile, though, I think the tapes, the Burnett tapes, will come out after he's president, when he can't serve Mark Burnett anymore and he's out of office. Then they'll release it. Thank you, Amy. Thank you for being here. Absolutely. It's always good to have you here. We appreciate you. Oh my God, the Reagan talking to Nixon tapes, that got swamped entirely this week. And by the way, zero surprise. I mean, Reagan recorded an entire album where he, was sent out to like coffee clatches of housewives, telling them that Medicare was socialism, and that this was the march of communism destroying America.